The rain in New York never just falls, it lingers. It hangs between the skyscrapers like a secret no one wants to tell. Emma pressed the edge of her guitar case closer to her chest as she dashed under the convenience store canopy. Her hair clung to her cheeks, her fingers trembling from the cold. She whispered to herself, "Just another storm. It'll pass." Then she saw him, a young man crouched near the vending machine, sheltering an old film camera beneath his jacket, like it was something fragile, sacred even. His hoodie was soaked, his sneakers dripping with rainwater, yet his smile was calm. "You look like you could use some dry shelter," he said, offering her the corner where the roof didn't leak. "Thanks," Emma muttered, brushing off the raindrops from her case. He adjusted the camera, the faint click of its lens echoing in the silence between thunder. "You're a musician trying to be?" "Then, I'm trying to be a photographer. Guess that makes us both dreamers." Emma laughed softly. It wasn't flirtation, it was something purer, like the brief warmth that comes before a storm breaks again. They talked until the rain slowed, about nothing and everything, street performers in Brooklyn, the smell of bookstores, the loneliness of the city. When the clouds finally parted, a faint glow appeared behind them, the city's light bouncing off the thin mist, soft and surreal. Ethan raised his camera. "Look up," he said. "Why?" "Because you look like you're searching for something." The flash went off, capturing her with her face tilted toward the silver sky. Later, as the rain returned in drizzle, Emma asked, "Do you always take pictures of strangers?" "Only the ones who look like they belong to the sky," he said, smiling. She rolled her eyes. "That's cheesy." "Maybe. But if we ever lose each other," he said quietly, "just look up at the same sky. I'll be there." Emma didn't know why that sentence stayed in her chest like a heartbeat. When the storm ended, they exchanged names, not numbers. Just names. Ethan, Emma. The next morning, she woke to find a photo slipped under her apartment door. It was the picture he took, her face illuminated by the streetlight, the rain falling behind her like silver threads. On the back, in small handwriting, were 5 words. "First wish, remember this night." A month later, winter arrived early in New York. Emma sat by her apartment window, her guitar leaning against the radiator, a mug of cocoa untouched beside her. The city below was soaked in white fog, the world outside muted like a photograph left too long in the sun. She hadn't seen Ethan since that night under the rain, but she thought of him every time she looked up at the sky. Then, one evening, a small envelope appeared in her mailbox. No sender, just a foreign stamp. Her hands trembled as she tore it open. Inside was a photo, the same city skyline, but viewed from across the ocean. Ethan had written in ink that smudged slightly from water stains. "Same sky. Different side. I got accepted into the Royal Academy for Photography. I thought of you when I saw the stars above the Thames." Emma smiled through her tears. She wrote back instantly, telling him about the small bars she played in, how her songs were finally being noticed. For a while, letters became their rhythm. Every 2 weeks, one letter in each direction. His words painted foggy London streets, cobblestone paths, and riverside markets that smelled like roasted chestnuts. Hers carried the hum of subways, the buzz of neon, and late-night rehearsals where she sang about the boy who belongs to the sky. It wasn't love yet. It was something quieter. Something that lived between envelopes and postage stamps. Until one day, his letter came later than usual. Then another delay. Then silence. Weeks turned into months. Emma stood by her mailbox every morning like someone waiting for spring in the middle of winter. When a letter finally arrived, it was different, thicker, heavier, and written on hotel stationery. "I'm sorry for disappearing. London isn't as bright as I thought. The sky feels colder here. But I saw your face in the clouds last night. Maybe that's what home means." He had drawn a tiny constellation beneath the words, Orion, the same stars they once watched through the rain in New York. Emma pressed the paper to her chest. She whispered, "Then I'll keep singing under the same stars." That night, she sat by her window again, her voice soft, trembling, as she sang the first verse of a song that would later become her most famous one. "Even when oceans lie between, I'll wish on the sky where you have been." Outside, snow began to fall. And somewhere across the Atlantic, Ethan raised his camera toward the same sky, clicking the shutter as if he could capture her voice inside the frame. It was the kind of night that made silence feel alive. The observatory dome in Central Park was packed with people waiting for the total lunar eclipse, the first in over a decade. Emma had been invited to perform there, her name printed in small letters beneath the event schedule. Live music by Emma Cole. As the crowd gathered, her fingers trembled over the piano keys. The air smelled of rain and metal, and above the glass roof, the moon began to dim, slipping slowly into shadow. She told herself she wasn't thinking of him. But every note betrayed her. The melody she played, slow, fragile, uncertain, was the same tune Ethan once heard when they first met. "You should record that someday," he had told her. "It sounds like something the sky would hum if it could sing." Halfway through her performance, she noticed something on the stage floor. An envelope slipped beneath the pedals. She bent down to pick it up. Her name was written in handwriting she knew by heart. Her breath caught. The lights above blurred. She tore it open. "I'll be leaving London soon. They offered me a position in Iceland, photographing auroras. But before I go, I need you to know this. Every time I looked at the sky, I was never alone. I saw you there." There was no return address, only a pressed forget-me-not flower sealed inside. Emma froze. The audience clapped, but she didn't hear them. She just looked up through the glass dome, at the darkening moon swallowing the light. Tears welled up, her hands trembling as she began to play again. The notes spilled out like quiet sobs, fragile and luminous. And then, as the eclipse reached totality, the moon disappeared completely. Emma whispered under her breath, "If he's watching the same moon, then maybe he'll hear this." She played until her vision blurred, until sound and light melted together. When the last chord faded, the hall went silent, utterly painfully silent. Afterward, she sat alone by the piano long after the audience had left. Her manager approached her, whispering softly, "Emma, are you okay?" She smiled faintly. "Yeah. Just thinking how beautiful it is. How something can vanish and still feel so close." That night, on the opposite side of the ocean, Ethan stood on a London rooftop with his camera aimed at the same eclipsed moon. He clicked the shutter. The photo came out almost black, except for one small light reflecting off the lens. He smiled to himself. She's still playing. Time moved like snowfall, quiet, steady, erasing what it touched. 3 years had passed since the eclipse night. Emma's music had grown known across cafes and subway stations. People stopped to listen, some leaving coins, some leaving tears. Yet, when the applause faded, it always felt like something or someone was missing. Her songs carried pieces of a man most had never met. She didn't sing his name, but he lived in every chord, every pause, every silence between verses. The letters had stopped coming 2 winters ago. The last one arrived on a Sunday morning, short and unfinished. "The light here feels different now. Maybe all." The sentence ended mid-thought, as if the writer had been interrupted, or disappeared into the space between stars. Emma tried to reply anyway, writing letters that she never mailed. They piled up in a shoebox under her bed, tied together with a blue ribbon. One night, unable to sleep, she opened that box and reread the first one. His words were faded, the paper soft and worn. "If we ever lose each other, just look up." She smiled bitterly. "I've been looking up for 3 years," she whispered. "Where are you now, Ethan?" The next morning, she walked to the post office out of habit. The clerk, an older man with kind eyes, handed her a small envelope. There was no return address, but "It's for you." Emma froze. The envelope was yellowed, edges frayed. The stamp from Iceland dated nearly 2 years earlier. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a single photograph, a night sky shimmering with green auroras, stretching over a frozen lake. At the bottom, written in faint pencil, "Still the same sky." No signature, no explanation. Only the echo of what was lost. Emma pressed the photo to her chest. For a long time, she couldn't move. That night, she sang at a small rooftop bar overlooking the city. Her setlist was short, just one song. The crowd was quiet, the kind of quiet that listens deeply. "If I could send my voice through clouds, Would you still be waiting now? The stars forget, but I still try to find your name in the night sky. When the song ended, no one clapped. The wind carried her voice away, like it always did, across streets, across oceans, across years. Somewhere far north, under a curtain of green light, a man stood by a frozen lake with a camera around his neck, eyes turned upward. He whispered into the wind. I never stopped listening. The city was blooming again. Spring had returned to New York with its fragile warmth, carrying the scent of rain-soaked pavement and magnolia trees. Emma hadn't written a song for months. Her voice, once gentle and full of longing, had gone quiet. She spent most of her days teaching at a small music academy near Washington Square, her evenings walking home through the same streets she and Ethan once shared in letters. One afternoon, while browsing a local art journal, she froze. On the glossy page was a black and white photograph titled The Sky Between Us. The caption read, part of the late Ethan Cole's final collection, exhibited at the London Gallery this month. Emma's breath hitched. Late, her hands trembled as she reread the name, again and again, until the letters blurred. Ethan Cole. There was no mistake. The photo beneath the title showed a skyline under a night sky split by light, half London, half New York, stitched together by clouds and constellations. And in the faint reflection of a window, barely visible, was a shadow of two figures standing apart, one holding a camera, one looking up. She couldn't move for a long time. When she finally did, she found herself booking a ticket to London. That night, unable to sleep, she looked at the photo again online. There was a short description by the curator, taken during the artist's final travels before an accident near the Arctic Circle. Cole's work explores the idea of distance, how two people can live under the same sky, yet never meet again. Her tears fell silently onto the screen. No, she whispered. You promised. We'd find each other under the same sky. The next morning, she boarded a plane. The clouds outside her window looked like scattered pieces of light, drifting endlessly between worlds. She pulled the old Iceland letter from her bag and read it again. Still the same sky. Her fingers brushed the photo of the aurora, tracing the faint pencil marks where his hand had once pressed. Somewhere above the Atlantic, the seatbelt sign flickered. The intercom crackled as the pilot spoke softly about turbulence, but Emma barely heard him. Her gaze remained fixed on the horizon, the line where the sky met the sea. She whispered to herself, I'm coming to find you, Ethan. The plane tilted gently, rising toward the sunlight that spilled through the clouds. And for a moment, she thought she saw his silhouette there, standing against the glow, camera raised, waiting. The hum of the airplane filled the silence. Rows of passengers dozed beneath the dim cabin lights, while rain streaked softly against the window panes like falling threads of silver. Emma sat in seat 23A, her fingers tracing the photo of the aurora tucked into her journal. The words "still the same sky" seemed to breathe against the paper, fragile yet alive. She hadn't flown in years. The air smelled faintly of coffee and steel, the kind of scent that lingered in airports and memories. The man sitting beside her, older, maybe in his 50s, glanced at her notebook. Beautiful picture, he said kindly. I've seen skies like that once, near Iceland. Her eyes lit up. You have. He nodded, smiling. Yes. I was on a documentary flight years ago. We were following a small crew of photographers. One of them didn't make it back. Emma's heart tightened. What happened? There was an accident, the man continued softly. The plane went down near the northern fjord. Most of the wreckage was never found. But they say the lead photographer's camera was recovered months later, still intact. The last photo on it was a woman looking up at the sky. Emma froze. Her pulse pounded so loud she could barely breathe. He didn't notice her trembling hands. They said the man's name was Cole. Ethan Cole, I think. For a moment, everything blurred. The hum of engines, the chatter of passengers, the rain beyond the glass. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She turned to the window, tears spilling silently down her face. The man hesitated. Are you all right, miss? Emma nodded faintly, forcing a whisper. Yes, I just knew him. He gave her a look of quiet sorrow, then said nothing more. The plane tilted, breaking through a thick layer of clouds. Sunlight flooded the cabin, turning the edges of every raindrop into tiny prisms. Emma pressed her forehead to the cold glass, whispering, "You promised we'd meet under the same sky. So why did you go first?" From her pocket, she pulled out the letter he once sent, the one that ended mid-sentence. The ink had faded with time, but she traced the unfinished line, as if completing it herself. "Maybe I'll wait for you." Her tears darkened the page, blurring the words. Outside, the clouds parted, revealing a vast horizon of blue and white. For a fleeting instant, sunlight struck the wing at just the right angle, and reflected the shape of a figure, standing in the brightness, holding a camera toward her window. Emma gasped. But when she blinked, it was gone. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be descending into London shortly. Local time is 8:47 p.m. Emma exhaled shakily, clutching the photograph. As the plane dipped through layers of mist, she whispered one last time, not to herself, but to him. If love can travel through time, then maybe it just took the long way home. London greeted her with rain. Not the thunderous kind she remembered from New York, but a soft, endless drizzle that felt like the city was whispering rather than crying. Emma stepped out of the taxi, suitcase in hand, as fog rolled down the narrow street. The address she'd written from the exhibition notes led her to Primrose Hill, a quiet neighborhood perched above the city. At the end of a cobblestone lane stood a small brick house, ivy climbing its sides, curtains drawn. On the front gate, barely visible beneath years of rust, a nameplate read, "Cole Residence." Her heart clenched. She hesitated for a long time before knocking. The sound echoed through the house, swallowed by silence. Then soft footsteps approached. The door creaked open, revealing an elderly woman wrapped in a shawl, her eyes pale but sharp. "Yes, I'm looking for Ethan Cole," Emma managed to say. The woman's expression changed, not surprise, but recognition. "You must be Emma." Emma froze. "You know me." The old woman smiled faintly. "He spoke of you often. Said your songs kept him company in the cold." Emma's voice cracked. "Is he?" The woman gently nodded. "He's gone, love, but he never really left." She stepped aside. "Come in. He'd want you to see his world." Inside, the house smelled of pine wood and old photographs. Dozens of framed pictures covered the walls, auroras, mountains, skies from every corner of the earth. But one wall was different. It was filled with portraits of her. Not posed, not staged, just moments. Emma playing guitar by a window. Emma laughing in the rain. Emma looking up at the stars. Her breath hitched. "How did he?" "He carried your first photograph everywhere," the woman said softly. "He once told me, if love can't survive distance, maybe it survives through light." Emma's eyes filled with tears as she approached the old desk by the window. On it lay a half-developed photo roll, a worn camera, and a small glass jar containing a folded piece of paper. She opened it. For Emma, if she ever finds this place, I never stopped waiting. Every sky, every frame, every star, was another way of coming back to you. Her tears fell onto the note, smudging the ink. She whispered, "You kept your promise." The old woman placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "He took that photo the day before the accident," she said softly. "He was standing by the frozen lake in Iceland. When the light hit the sky, he smiled and said, 'She'll love this one.'" Emma held the letter close to her heart. The room blurred. Outside, the drizzle turned to mist, wrapping the city in silver. Through the fogged window, the faint outline of the London skyline shimmered beneath a break in the clouds, and a single star emerged. She closed her eyes, whispering, "Ethan, I found you." The night sky over London had never looked so clear. For the first time in years, the clouds broke apart, revealing a stretch of velvet darkness glittering with stars. Emma stood on the hill outside the Cole residence, her coat buttoned against the wind. The old woman had fallen asleep hours ago, leaving her alone with the house full of photographs and memories that refused to fade. She looked up at the sky. The stars were faint, shy, scattered across the horizon like distant notes in an unfinished song. Then, out of nowhere, a single streak of light tore across the darkness, a meteor, then another, and another. Within seconds, The heavens erupted into a slow, breathtaking rain of fire. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Her fingers tightened around Ethan's old camera, the same one she found on his desk earlier that day. The metal felt cold and heavy, yet alive with something she couldn't name. She turned it on. The shutter clicked, mechanical and fragile, as if awakening from a long sleep. "I don't even know if you can hear me," she whispered to the night, voice trembling. "But I'm here, under the same sky, just like you said." The wind brushed through her hair, carrying the faint smell of rain and pine. She tilted her head upward, letting tears mix with starlight. "Do you see it too?" she asked softly. In the moment between two meteors, everything fell silent, the kind of silence that feels like someone's listening. Emma lifted the camera, pointed it toward the stars, and pressed the shutter. The flash flickered for a brief heartbeat. She saw a reflection in the lens. A figure standing beside her, blurred by the light, smiling the way he used to. "Ethan," she whispered. The wind answered with a whisper of its own, gentle and warm. "Keep looking up." Her tears broke into a quiet laugh. "Always." She took another photo, then another, capturing streaks of light as they fell like slow-burning wishes. Hours passed, and the sky softened from black to deep blue. When the last meteor faded, she sat on the cold grass, camera resting in her lap. "Maybe love isn't about holding on," she murmured. "Maybe it's about remembering." The first hint of dawn touched the rooftops below, turning the city gold. Emma stood, brushing dew from her coat. Before heading back inside, she turned one last time, toward the sky and whispered, "I saw them all, Ethan. Every one you sent." The morning light spilled softly across the room. Emma sat by the window of the coal house, a small cup of tea growing cold beside her, Ethan's old camera resting in her lap. She hadn't slept. The film she'd shot during the meteor shower still sat inside the camera, waiting like a secret that hadn't yet decided whether to reveal itself. Outside, the fog had lifted. The city glowed beneath a pale sunrise, quiet, golden, and distant. She turned the camera over in her hands, fingers brushing the scratches along its side, each one a mark from another journey, another story. On the bottom plate, faintly etched in handwriting so small she almost missed it, were 4 words. "For the girl who looks up." Her throat tightened. After breakfast, she walked to a small film lab tucked between 2 bookshops on Camden Street. The bell above the door chimed as she entered. The man behind the counter, gray-haired and gentle, smiled. "Developing?" She nodded, placing the camera on the counter like something sacred. "It's old film. I don't even know if it still works." He took it carefully, examining it with reverence. "Let's find out." The wait felt endless. Emma sat in the corner, watching sunlight spill across the floor, painting golden lines over the dusty tiles. Each minute stretched longer than the last. Finally the man returned, a small envelope in his hands. He hesitated before speaking. "You might want to sit down." Her pulse quickened. "Why?" He handed her the envelope, eyes soft with something close to wonder. "These aren't just stars, Miss." She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were a dozen glossy prints, each one filled with the night sky, streaked with falling meteors. But in every photo, faintly, almost hidden in the light, there was a silhouette. A man's silhouette, standing beside her. Every single frame. In one, his head was turned toward her. In another, his hand seemed to reach out, barely visible in the shimmer of light. And in the final photo, the clearest of all, Ethan was standing behind her, smiling, his camera raised toward the stars. Emma's breath broke into a sob. The film had captured what her eyes could not. A love that refused to vanish with distance, or death, or time. The old man spoke softly. "Strange thing, film. Sometimes it remembers what the heart sees." Emma pressed the photos to her chest, tears spilling freely now. "I thought I'd lost him," she whispered. The man smiled kindly. "Maybe love just changed the way it stays." When she left the shop, the city air felt warmer, gentler. She looked up. The clouds were parting again, sunlight threading through. For the first time in years, she didn't cry. She smiled. "You kept your promise, Ethan." She took one last look at the final photo, the 2 of them beneath the same shower of light, and whispered, Now it's my turn to remember you in every sky. Summer came quietly to London. The air smelled of rain and jasmine, the streets shimmering in the late sunlight that lingered just a little too long each evening. Emma stayed in the small brick house on Primrose Hill for several weeks. She played music again softly, quietly filling the rooms where silence had once lived. Sometimes, she would open the windows and let the notes drift into the air, carried by the wind across rooftops and clouds. One morning, she placed Ethan's photos into frames and hung them on the wall. Not as reminders of loss, but as proof that love had existed. The final picture, the one that showed him standing behind her under the meteor shower, she set in the middle of the wall, above the piano. Every morning the light from the window touched it first. She began to write again, but her songs were different now. They weren't about waiting or missing or pain. They were about remembering, about the quiet joy that lingers after grief softens into peace. At night she often climbed the hill behind the house with her guitar, watching the city lights flicker like constellations. The air felt lighter there, as if it belonged to both of them. One evening, as twilight deepened, she began to sing a new song. Her voice was low, steady, carrying into the open sky. We stood beneath the same sky, even when oceans lied. You taught me how to say goodbye, without ever leaving my side. Her fingers brushed against the strings, the melody trembling, alive. When she looked up, a single star fell, a flash of silver, brief but bright. She smiled. You always choose perfect timing. Later that night, she placed the developed film back inside Ethan's camera and set it on the windowsill. Lens pointed toward the heavens. So you can keep taking pictures, she whispered. Wherever you are. The wind rustled the curtains, gentle as breath. For a moment, she thought she heard it again, his voice, faint but warm. You found me, Emma. She closed her eyes. And I'll keep finding you. Down below, the city lights shimmered like stars fallen to earth. Above, the real ones burned silent, eternal, familiar. And between them, somewhere, love remained. Not bound by distance, not broken by time. Just waiting, quietly, beneath the same sky.